I was sitting on my back steps talking on a cordless phone, and it was starting to rain. I hear this rumbling in the distance, and I was like, oh no. And then a loud crack. And that lightning came down and just hit my right arm. And after it passed through my body and left char marks on the concrete steps where I was sitting. There was this huge, loving, formless presence. I couldn't see this presence, but I could feel this presence, and he was huge, 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 big as the house. And it just wrapped me up. You know, it was like being wrapped in this soft, warm blanket. And I was kind of like, okay, and how did we get here? And what is this? But I was just in the wow factor, because the colors were so beautiful, and there were flowers everywhere, and I heard birds, and you know, there were animals, and there was a stream, and that stream sparkled like diamonds. The water was blue, and it was so beautiful. Just at the entrance, I mean, all of this was just at the entrance of the garden, this magnificent beauty. 2 men appeared and came to greet me. And at first I thought they were angels. I know who you are! These were my 2 brothers who had died when they were babies. And now they were fully grown men. And they looked just like my dad when my dad was a young man. When they smiled, it was like, oh my gosh, well, you know. And we just had this wonderful family reunion. It was just amazing. It was like, I'm so happy to see you, and I remember you, and I know you, and you know me. Michael got on one side of me, and Stephen got on the other side of me. And we walked a little bit further into the garden. And as we did that, that huge loving presence that was with us got behind me. It was like a screen, watching a screen in my life, an old-fashioned movie on an old-fashioned movie reel, and this was my life review. And not only did I have my 2 brothers with me in this huge loving presence, who I knew was God, there was a whole bunch of other people that came, and they were loving on me too, you know. And I was like, I know them and they know me, but I didn't know from where I knew them from. Like, we were having another family reunion with all these people, but they were all gathered around for love and support. And I was supposed to be watching this movie, and so I was watching this movie. And it was from the moment I was born until that time that I died, but it was over that fast. And I thought, I missed something. Something's missing here. And because there was no judgment, none at all. No, I didn't judge myself. I mean, I learned that the only judgment we have is when we judge ourselves, standing with God there. And all God does is love you through it. He doesn't judge you. Well, I didn't judge me either. I just watched it. I was kind of going with the flow. I was like, could have knocked me over with a feather with everything that was going on. It's the little things that you do. It's the little things, the loving things, or the not so loving things. It's not these grand, great, big, humongous things that people think they have to do in order to earn your way into heaven, because you can't earn your way into heaven no matter what you do, for one. And for two, it's the little things. It's the smile you gave to someone whose life was really a mess, the hand on the shoulder. It's the sharing your toys when you were little. It's the, here, you lost your sweater and you're cold, here's my sweater. You know, little things you don't think would matter at all. That's the stuff that matters. Right after that, I heard God's voice. It was a man's voice. It was a gentle voice. It wasn't booming and angry. It was a gentle voice, but he said, what you put out into the universe will come back to you. And I had never heard words like that before. I didn't know what in the world that meant. And all of a sudden, it was like being hooked up to a giant IV bottle of knowledge. I started getting all of this divine knowledge. And it was one aha moment after another. I was getting answers to questions that mankind has been asking since the beginning of time, but I didn't know how to ask those questions. I didn't even have to ask them before I had the answers. And it was like, I was just blown away. If you put out love and respect and caring and compassion, that's what you're going to get back. If you put out lying and cheating and stealing and those kinds of things, that's what you're going to get back. But what happens is the things that you think, the things that you say, and the things that you feel come out of you, go out into the universe, spin, gain momentum, and then come back and they get you. And you don't know when, you don't know how, and people call this karma, people call this, whatever they call it, but it's like a natural law of God. It's just a normal, natural, God-made law. It's not a punishment. Good decisions make good consequences. Bad decisions make bad consequences. It's, you have to be very careful what it is. Also, another thing that I learned is that what you fill your soul with those things you fill your life with. So if you fill your life with beauty and love and compassion and good things, you watch good things on TV, you listen to good music, you don't put the trash into your heart and your mind, that's not going to come out of you. If you put, if you live that, you're filling your soul with that. There is no judgment and there is no punishment, and the consequences is not a punishment. It just is what it is. There was a building, and inside the building, there were people dressed in their finest clothes, and they were having a party. And it was, the inside of this building was fabulous. It had like mahogany walls, and there were expensive paintings on the walls, and there were chandeliers that just would blow your mind. They were so beautiful. And there was a man, women were in beautiful gowns with jewels, and men were in fancy suits. And there was a man sitting over in the corner playing this huge baby grand piano. And on the grand piano was this golden candelabra and this big crystal vase with roses spilling out onto the piano. And he was playing the music, and there was some people that were dancing, and some people were standing around just, talking. There was a butler, and he was holding a silver tray, and he was passing around champagne glasses. And there was tables along the wall, and they had expensive linens on the tables, and these huge flower arrangements that were every color that the women's dresses were. So it was just like looking at a wedding reception almost. But these people were and the tables were filled with cheeses and meats and fruits and vegetables and pastries and just anything and everything that you could possibly want. Not because, the food was there. You don't have to eat to sustain life in heaven, but you sure can eat because you enjoy it. And these people were having the most grand party I've ever seen. There was like a ball. And I've had people tell me, well, maybe they were having a party for you, and it was a welcoming party or something. I never thought about it. I was just overwhelmed with watching the beauty of everybody and how happy everybody was. And it was like, very cool. You get to drink champagne in heaven, and you can have cheese and meat and fruit and pastries and, the things that we enjoy here, we can still enjoy there. Not to sustain life, though. We don't have to eat to sustain life or sleep to sustain life or whatever. You do it because it brings you joy. And it was just magnificent to see that. And that was like, I walked right into the room and there was all this going on. So it wasn't like I saw it from a distance. It was right there. As my brothers and I walked further into the garden, there was a grove of trees, and I saw Jesus walking out from this grove of trees, and he walked over to me. And when he did that, my brothers disappeared. I have no idea where they went because, when Jesus is there, I didn't have eyes for anybody else. I don't know where they went to. So he started talking to me, and we were walking as he was talking, and he told me that he loved me and not to be afraid, and that he'd always been with me and he always would be with me. I guess that was my first clue that I was going to be coming back, but it's kind of went in one ear and out the other because I was just like, this time he was wearing, it looked like a robe, but he still looked exactly the same. And then he walked me over to a wooded glen, and there was big tall pine trees and the long pine needles. And I saw a bunch of pine needles on the ground, and I saw some pine cones, and these little blue flowers popped up underneath the pine needles, and they were really pretty. And there was a log that I guess had fallen down or whatever. I mean, it was laying there, and it was just such a really pretty, shady. It was shady and cool and comfortable, and you could see the sun coming through the leaves. As he walked me over to where the log was, I sat down on the log, and there was a man sitting on the other end of the log. Well, Jesus had kept on going after that. The man sitting on the log was God. And he was kind of sitting like this, and he had a stick, and he was doodling in the I don't know, pine needles or whatever, the dirt or whatever. And so we talked, kind of chit-chatted, not really about anything, just, hello. And I was just like, this is God. And he said, what would you do if it was just me and you? And I said, well, what do you mean? I had no idea what he was talking about. And he said, what would you do if it was just me and you? No parents, no husband, no children, no friends, just me and you. And I said, I don't understand. I don't know what you're talking about, what you mean. So he said, well, come with me. So we got up and we walked a little bit further into the wooded area, and there was a clearing. And it was like he kind of waved his hand over the sky, and the sky opened up. And what he showed me was the vastness of the universe with nothing in it. It was just sparkling stars and spinning planets and rainbow-colored gases, and it was very beautiful, but it was huge. It was really big, and it was empty. And I thought, I looked at him and I said, no. I said no, because after the first 10 minutes of all of that and just me and you would be so sick of my chatter and my questions you wouldn't like me anymore. So he kind of threw his head back and he laughed. And God has an absolutely magnificent laugh. He's really cool. So we walked back. We walked back and we sat back on the log. And he said, okay, so what would you do if it was just me and you? And I said, I really didn't know how to answer that question. I really didn't. And I said, and I don't know why I said this because I don't know anything about the Quran or Islam or anything. But I said, God, your 100th name is God is everywhere. God, or your 100th name in the Quran is God is everywhere, God is nowhere, and God is in me. And he said, yes, that's right. And I was like, okay. I was shocked at myself because I didn't know where that came from. But there was this beautiful oak tree in front of me, and I noticed the detail of the bark, and I noticed the roots beneath the ground and how they were relying on the soil to get the nutrients. And I saw the leaves on the trees and the veins in the leaves, and I noticed that the air is cleaned by the tree. So everything is dependent upon everything else, and everything is connected to everything else. And I noticed that, and I think God put that in my head or whatever to get me to notice this. And I said, well, God, you made this tree. You are in this tree, so when I see this tree, I see you. He said, yes, that's right. And I thought, oh, okay. So I started thinking more, and my parents popped into my head, and I said, well, God, you made my parents. You are in my parents, so when I see my parents, I see you. And he said, yes, that's right. And, well, I started thinking about people that are cruel to other people, and certain people that had really hurt me. And I said, God, you made these people. I said, there are people that hurt other people. And I said, but you made these people. You are in these people. So when I see these people, I see you. He said, yes, that's right. He said, now I have a question for you. I said, okay. He said, when you look in the mirror, what do you see? And my normal answer would have been, not much, just me. But that's not something you tell God. So I thought about it. I didn't say that. I said, God, you made me. You are in me. So when I look in the mirror, I see you. He said, yes, that's right. He was so happy. His eyes sparkled all over, and he was just, genuinely happy that I had the right answer. That was right. Well, then it was like getting another one of those downloads, and it was like realizing, and I know this may not be big to most people, but this was huge to me because of stuff that I'd been through in my adult life. That God doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't make junk. He makes each one of us perfect. And in His eyes, we are perfect exactly the way we are. And any cracks that we might have from hard life or wounds that we might have, His love shines through those cracks and heals us and makes us perfect. And He doesn't see any of the flaws that we see. When we see ourselves, we're hardest on ourselves, but He doesn't see that. He sees the perfect soul that He made, the perfect person that He made, and He loves us just the way we are. So what I had to do is I had to start realizing that beauty isn't what's on the outside, it's what's in here, and this is what matters. And because, everybody's beauty fades at some point in their life. They get older and, they're not the young, gorgeous things that they used to be, but that's not what's important. Beauty is in here. And so that was a huge lesson that He was trying to get me to see, that it was not to listen to all those people that had been trashing me all my adult life, but He saw me as beautiful. He saw me as perfect. He loves me just the way I am. And that I had to be happy with that. And I had to find happiness within myself and not try to find it outside, externally. It comes from in here. And so that was a big lesson. So what happened after that was these two angels came to me and they got me. They were ornately dressed. They didn't have wings like people think angels have wings. They were just beautiful, ornately dressed women. And they came and they got me and they took me to this lake that was very calm and looked like glass. And I looked into the lake and I could see future world events. So this was back in 2005, and those events that I saw are stuff that's happening now. We have time here, and it's measured by looking at the clock, and the hands move, and you see it's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, it's 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. That's not the way it is in heaven. I could have only been there for a couple of minutes, but it seemed like I was there for weeks. I had so much stuff was happening. And there was definitely steps, progressions in my near-death experience. First I went through the clouds, then I met my brothers, then I heard his voice say, what you put out there, then the download of information, then this step, then this step, then this step. So it was constantly doing something, learning something, getting, seeing something. There's so much to see, and I could see and smell and touch, and so all of my senses were so heightened. I was so aware, much, much more than ever possible here on earth. Yeah. I just know that I woke up next to the stairs, and the phone was clear across the yard, and it was just charred black. And I was instantly in pain. It was agony. I was so sick. And it hurt so bad. But before, there was no pain. And I was more alive then than I am right now. And I was like, what in the world just happened? I don't understand. For the first 6 months after the near-death experience, I lived in what I called a pink bubble because I didn't know what else to call it. I was still vibrating at that very high vibrational, it was like I was still in heaven, even though I was here on earth. And it was everything I looked at. I would look at this plant and I could see this golden aura around the plant, around animals, around people. I could see it was the life force of their life force. I saw auras, I was so connected still with God. I loved everything. I loved everyone. And my senses were still so heightened that I could see miles away. I could see minute details like eagle vision, and I could hear the hum of the electricity that was running through the electrical cords. I remember sitting watching, we had zoysia grass in our yard. Zoysia grass is beautiful grass in the summer, but it turns like dead straw in the wintertime. So it's like, June before the grass, it wakes up and the grass, when grass goes to seed and it grows. Okay, well I literally watched the grass, the seed, watching it pop open. I could see flowers opening up. I had something in my yard planted called Star of Bethlehem was the flower. And it closes at night and it opens in the daytime. And I could sit there and watch the petals just do this. And it was like watching it in slow motion, watching them open up like this, I would go outside at night and I could see a full rainbow in the dark at night. I mean, I was still so connected with God, with heaven. And you couldn't hurt me if you tried. It was like I was wrapped in this pink bubble. And it was like I was so in love with everything and everyone. I hate bugs. I hate bugs. For me, hell would be in a room full of bugs. Well, I was out in the backyard with my grandsons, and there was one of those pinching beetles, that have the horn beetles or whatever that thing is called. They wanted to kill it. Grandma, kill that, kill that. I was like, no, you can't kill that. It's a living thing. You can't kill that. I went over and I picked it up. I picked it up in my hand and I said, now look at that. It's got little legs and, it's alive. It's a living thing. You can't kill it just to kill it. So I picked it up and I carried it over and put it in the flower bed. My grandsons were like, Grandma, what's wrong with you? you picked up a bug. Oh my gosh. It was a big deal because I really don't like bugs. But I was just so connected with everything. And that lasted for about 6 months. And then it was the cruelty of the people around me, the relationship I was in and everything. It was just, it was horrific, some of the stuff that was going on. And so it was like, it took me out of that pink bubble, like instantly. Just 1 minute I was in it and I was so happy and so blissful all the time, getting downloads of information, seeing things that my normal eyes wouldn't see, I hadn't seen before my near-death experience. And now I was able to fully embrace the beauty of nature and the birds and the flowers and the trees and just, really feel it and see the life force around it, see it's alive, it's really alive, and God's Spirit is in that. So when I'm looking at this flower or this bug or this bird, God put His Spirit into that when He created it. So when I'm looking at the beauty of whatever it is, I'm seeing God too, And so it was just amazing. Not that we are not God, okay? I am not God. I am a part of God. God breathed His DNA into me. He breathed His life into me. And I carry a part of Him in me. But I am not God. You are not God. And there's a misconception. A lot of people believe that we are God. We are not God. We carry a part of Him in us. We literally carry a part of His DNA in us because He breathed His life into us. Our physical body passes. We are still going on. And we are still growing and still evolving and still learning. You don't sit under trees eating bonbons for the rest of eternity. It doesn't happen that way. No, you're continually growing spiritually. You're continually learning and evolving and changing and experiencing things. I know that my mom watches over me. I've seen her. She's come to me. I've physically seen her, and she was soothing me and comforting me at a time when there was some big stuff that was about to take place. I didn't realize that something was about to happen, but she appeared one night, and she was touching my hair and touching my arm, and she was soothing me and letting me know it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. You're going to be just fine. And then within a matter of days after her visitation, all the caca hit the fan. It was like there was so much stuff going on, I didn't know which end was up. And remembering her coming to me, and it wasn't a dream, it wasn't a vision, I wasn't sleeping. Once I came out of the pink bubble, I did become very depressed. Well, for about 6 months after I came out, I was in shock. I was absolutely in shock. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing. And it was literal shock to go from seeing the face of God and talking to Jesus and the angels and my brothers, and all of my other loved ones, and then coming here and witnessing some of the cruelty that I did. It was just, it was like night and day, black and white. It was just so opposite that I was in shock. And there was only one person that I could talk to, just one. My family didn't understand me. The man I was married to at the time, he couldn't stand me. It was like, he thought I was, you think I was some monster from another planet that had 3 heads or something. He said I don't even know who you are. You aren't even you anymore. Who are you? And I was like, I'm still me. a better me. My marriage crumbled, fell apart. There was all kinds of horrendous things that were going on. My family didn't understand me. Even at the time, he tried to have me committed. And when I went to the hospital, the doctor said, "Do you know why you're here?" I said, "Well, yeah, they think I'm crazy." And so I explained to the doctor everything that had happened about the near-death experience, about being struck by the lightning, all of it. And he looked at me and he said, "There's nothing wrong with you. You've had a profound spiritual experience. There's not a thing wrong with you. If anything is wrong with you, it's your family that's the problem, not you." So it was like, and right then I thought, he's an angel. When I had my third near-death experience, I talked to my surgeon and the anesthesiologist, and they were both terrified. They wouldn't talk to me anymore after I told them that I had gone back to heaven. That was in November of 2016. I had a bowel blockage and I had to have emergency surgery. And it was horrible. I was so sick. They took me in to have the surgery. And what was interesting, before I had the surgery, I had to wait because they had another surgery ahead of me. And there was it was an angel, and I knew it was an angel because I've seen him before, and I knew. But he was walking up and down the hall, and he had a drink in his hand, and he would look right at me, Mm-hmm. And I would look right at him, and I knew who he was. And he comes into the room and he says, "Oh, don't mind me. I'm just here to help out." And I thought, "Oh, there you are again." And then it dawned on me, this was the angel of death. But I didn't realize that it was my death. He was loving, and it was like he was watching over me. When he was watching me, it wasn't like he wasn't leering at me. He wasn't being,
right,
gaga or whatever. It was like we made an eye-to-eye connection, and I knew who he was. And it was almost like he was confirming for me, "Yes, you know who I am, and yes." And I know that sounds weird, it sounds strange, but I knew. I just knew. So when it came time for my turn to go into surgery, I was calm. During the surgery, I came out of my body and I was floating above. I could see the doctors and nurses. They were leaned over like this. They had blue hats on their heads and they had blue gloves on. And I could see them working on me. And I was above them and over towards the corner of the room, but I could see down on what they were doing. That lasted a minute or two. And then there was this rainbow-colored light, and I kind of went up into that rainbow. It was almost like a spinning light, kind of like a whirlpool. So I go up through the light, and then I find myself, I'm in heaven again, same place I was before. There's a wall around the city, the glorious city. I call it the glorious city. And this wall was as tall as this room, and it was thick, really thick, and it was pure gold. And I couldn't get through that wall, and I'm standing there and I'm thinking, now why can't I get through this wall? I want to get through this wall. And I can't jump it, and it never dawned on me just to walk a couple feet down down the lane there and walk right into the gates, because there were gates that were open. And I heard all kinds of clanging dishes, and people were talking and laughing, and I heard music playing. It was they were getting ready for a party. Well, as I'm standing next to the golden wall, there's this little brown and white beagle puppy. He was so cute, a little fat belly and roly-poly, and he was jumping and barking, jumping up on my leg, and he was barking at me. So I leaned down and I was petting this puppy, playing with the puppy. And then I look up, and there's this beautiful field, okay? And there's real tall grasses, and in the grasses are these wildflowers, and they're just kind of swaying with the breeze. And it's the same kind of spring type day, this blue sky. The air was just sweet and crisp, and you go clean, and you just smell the freshness of it all. And I felt that love again. I just felt that deep love and acceptance, and it was just, I don't know. There's just not words to describe that feeling. And so I noticed to the right of this field was that fieldstone wall that I had seen in my second NDE, with the pink roses up and growing over it. And then there was lining trees on both sides, but then there was that meadow in between. And then on the opposite end was the garden where I had originally been in the garden. Well, I saw hundreds of people just pouring out of that garden. And they were walking from the garden through the meadow towards the gates of the city. And I saw a couple of, they looked like Middle Eastern men. They had the robes on, and they had the things on their head. And they were talking to each other, and they were laughing. And each person that I saw had an angel with them that was taller and more illuminated. Each person had their own angel that was walking with them from the garden through the meadow and over. I saw those two men. I saw women and children. There was all colors, all races, all traditions. God does not ask you what religion you are. He does not ask you how big your house is. He doesn't ask you how many cars you owned. He doesn't ask you what type of business you owned or how much money's in your bank account. He doesn't care about that stuff. The only question he asks you is, how much did you love? And what did you do with the relationships that you had in your life? How much did you love those people that he put into your life? Relationship is what's important to God, not religion. And people ask me all the time, what is the one true religion? There is no one true religion. God doesn't have a religion. He's too big to be put in a box, and he doesn't care what religion you are, as long as whatever religion that you choose, whatever religion is right for you, brings you closer to him. He doesn't care what it is. Religion is nothing more than a stepping stone or a teaching tool to help us reach out to God and learn who God is and who he is to us in our lives. That's all it is. So it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I mean, some people go to church because they need that community. Some people go because they need that structure of prayer set at a certain time or whatever. It just depends on the individual. And if whatever faith it is that you choose brings you closer to God, then that's the right one. That every religion has a piece. None of us have all of the pieces. So it's like having a beautiful, beautiful puzzle or a mosaic picture or a stained glass picture. And each tradition or each religion has a piece of that stained glass. But nobody has all of it. So if we could all come together with our individual pieces and put those pieces together by celebrating those things that we have in common and learning from each other those things that we have that are different, then we can put those pieces together, and then we might come up with a beautiful picture that gives us all of the information, but no one's going to have all of the pieces. I saw a man who looked like he might have been from New York. He was some kind of construction worker. He still had his hard hat on, and he had his blue jeans and a blue jean belt that had tools stuffed down in them. And he was walking along just looking around at everything. He was kind of by himself, but he had his angel with him. And he was just walking, breakneck speed. He wanted to get through those gates all right, but then there was two other men that came into my view, and I recognized the younger of the two. He was the son of a friend of mine, and I'd seen him through, lots of pictures and things, but he had died several years ago. Well, there was an older gentleman with him, and I just knew that was his dad. But they walked up to me to go into the gates, and I said, I know you. And they just looked at me and smiled, and then they went on into the gates. There was an angel, and this angel took me to a building. And this building, as I said before, the other ones, they're like alabaster, and the architecture is absolutely amazing. The columns and the ceilings and the archways and just magnificent. And there was a courtyard outside of this building. And it had these big ornate doors, one in the front and one in the back of the building. There was an angel, a big angel, tall angel, that stood at each entrance, one at the front and one at the back. And they had these special keys, the big keys. I don't even know they didn't even look like normal keys, but they were keys. They fit into the door, turn the door, and you go inside the building. And inside the building, there was nothing in the building except these beautiful marble columns and the archways and stained glass windows, and the light was in there. And in the middle of the room was this, I don't know if you call it a podium or a stand, or I'm not sure what, but it held on it a book. And this book was a huge book, and it was a living book. The pages were not made of paper. They were made of some kind of cloth. And it was a living, breathing cloth. And their light came out of the book. And it was open. You can't get into that room unless an angel lets you in. So the angel let me in and stood with me. Didn't say anything, but was staring straight ahead, kind of like keeping vigil while I was there looking at this book. I could not understand what was written on the book or on that particular page that it was open to. It was like an ancient script, some kind of symbols of some sort that I could not read, but it was written in gold. And the book itself was gold. And as I said, there was light that just came out of that book, and it was a living book. So when I realized that the angel wasn't going to give me any answers, because I was like, why can't I read this? What does that say? What does this mean? What is this? And he didn't say a word. He just stood there. I thought, please answer me. We walked outside when I was done, and I realized I wasn't going to get any answers in there, so I was done looking at it. We went outside, and he said to me, the only thing he said to me was to read the book of life as a gift. And then I got this download, I started getting this IV bottle of knowledge again. And it was like, that is the book of life. That is the book that holds the names of every single soul that has ever existed. Their whole life is written in that book. It's everything they thought, everything they said, everything they did, their purpose. But that book wasn't open to my page, so I couldn't read it. The pages were alive. The material that the book was made out of was a living, like cotton. Cotton is a living, breathing material. There are souls that haven't been born yet that'll still be put in that book. So it is a work in progress. It's not finished, but it goes back to the beginning of creation. Every single person or every single soul that ever existed, their life is in that book. They're written in that book. Your name is in that book. Everything about you is in that book. What the angel was telling me was that to read the book of life, it's a gift, just like speaking in tongues would be a gift, prophecy would be a gift. God gives you that gift, and God can take that gift away from you. It's not, you don't use pendulums and tarot cards and computer programs for money, saying, I can read your book of life, your Akashic records, or I can do all of that for a fee, and they whip out their computer program and stick it in the computer, or they use a pendulum or whatever, and I know that that's going to upset a bunch of people, and I'm so sorry, please forgive me, but the message was the message, and what I was told is that that's not the proper way to get, because you read it from your heart. And it is a gift given to you by God. I felt the reverence. I felt the holiness. Because every life is holy. Every soul is important. After that, I was sent back to my body, and I was in recovery. The nurse unhooked me from the machines, and I asked to speak to the anesthesiologist. And the anesthesiologist came in, and I said, I was in heaven. And that's all I had. And he was flipping through the chart. His eyes got real big. And he walked out of the room. When I got well enough to go back to my room, I had a message from a friend of mine who was also a friend of the mother of the son. Mm-hmm. Her husband died while I was in surgery. And I said, I know, because I saw her husband was with her son, and they went into the city. So I was able to tell her that they were together and that they were okay. So I was not surprised when I got that message that he had died while I was in surgery. Now, as far as the puppy, when I was telling my daughter about the experience that I had, she said, well, Mom, we had a neighbor that lived down the street from us that we had to call the police on, and he was arrested for beating his beagle puppy to death. And I told her, I said, well, that was the beagle puppy, and he's fine, and he's healthy, and our beloved pets do go to heaven. When things are confirmed for me after years or whatever, and all of a sudden something gets confirmed, it's like, oh, thank you, Jesus. It's a wonderful feeling. I knew there was a reason. Once I got that message from my friend that lady's husband had died, there was a reason why I saw him. Why? Maybe that was the whole reason I was sent back there to begin with, was to be able to see those two together, go into the city, to be able to tell her, yes, they're together and they're fine, and they're together. And also to be able to tell my daughter about the puppy, that what was so horrible turned out to be okay. Yeah, the guy got in trouble for doing it, and he deserved it, but the puppy wasn't suffering. The puppy was a little puppy, and he was rolling around playing. I was in the hospital from having had seizures, and I had a medication reaction and quit breathing. I left my body, and I went, like, if you can imagine what like a helium balloon, how it goes up, 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 just kind of slowly goes up. Well, that's what I did. I left my body, and I went up through the roof, up through the ceiling, out through the roof, and up into the sky, and I just floated up like a helium balloon is what it felt like. And I was in the, I guess outer space, I don't know, the universe, but I was wrapped in what felt like a black velvet blanket. It was so soft and so warm and so cozy, but yet I could see through the fabric, and I could see the sparkling of the stars and the planets and things like that. I could see the universe, but I felt more comfortable in the blanket, so I didn't look too long. And I heard a conversation. It was like I was like a baby again. I was in this black velvet encasement, and I was just being held there, suspended. God was holding me, and he was there, and I knew he was there. I could feel his love again, and I heard a conversation, and I don't know if it was God was talking to me or God was talking to someone else about me, but the conversation was about whether I was going to stay or go. And I just was, I could see myself in a fetal position. And I felt like I was a baby again, just wrapped in that beautiful black velvet blanket. And I felt safe and protected and loved, and I knew God was right there. But this is what we call the void, this black space. But having had all the NDEs that I've had and being on the different groups and doing some of the reading and stuff, people talked about the void, and I was terrified of the void. I wasn't terrified of dying, but I was terrified of going to the void until I went there. And it was like, this isn't scary. It's soft. It's comforting. It's a place of rest. And I so needed the rest. And it was a place of sort of an in-between place from here and heaven, I guess. I don't know, but it was, I wasn't scared. I didn't feel any pain. I didn't feel confusion. I didn't feel worry. I felt love. I felt protected. I felt safe and warm. And then I got this sensation of being like a vacuum, sort of sucking me down, down, down. It was like 3 downs, down, down, down. And then I was back in my bed, and oh my gosh, the light was so bright, and it was so painful. And the doctors were standing next to the bed yelling at me, and there were nurses all over the room. And I could see poor Gary standing over in the corner by the door, and he had this horrified look on his face. And I was just like, and I had a non-breather oxygen mask on my face. And so that's what I remember. Jesus came to visit me again when I was taking care of my mom. She was taking a nap, and I was in the kitchen mopping the floor. And I heard this noise, and I turned around, and there was Jesus. He was standing up against the counter with his feet crossed like this and his hands crossed over his arm, over his chest like this. I said, "Don't you move. Don't you move. I'm going to get a piece of paper and write down what you say." What he said to me was, "You cry because you think I cast you away from me when you were in heaven, and that's so far from the truth." He said, "Everything that's happened to you in your life has happened to you to get you prepared for this important job I have for you." I was like, "Well, what job is that?" And he said, "Just love. That's all you have to do, just love, and that's what you do best." And he said, when you get tired, when you get weary, when you feel sad, when you feel lonely, when you feel heavy burdened or too much, the weight of the world is on your shoulders, you give that to me because I can handle it, I'm strong enough. He said, "You let me handle all that. I'm big enough, I'm strong enough to handle that. You just give that to me, and you just do what you do best, and that's love. You just love. That's it. That's it." And I was just like, because I did cry a lot, thinking, I did have that depression that set in, and I thought, 4 times now? Really? Well, at that time it was 3. Really? You're going to send me back? What is it about me that you don't like? Why do you keep sending me back? Why? What's the deal with that? And for him to say, you cry because you think I cast you away, and I didn't. And he's always come to me at pivotal moments. And he's always said the exact right words that I needed to hear. He always does that. I guess the answer is I learned that no matter what the action is that you do, no matter how big or small the action is, whether it's picking up trash or doing dishes or making food for your family or talking to a bazillion people in an amphitheater about spiritual matters, it doesn't matter what it is you do. If you do it with love, that is so huge to God. And you are moving mountains, and you are changing the world. Because there's a lot of people out there that believe that lie, the greatest lie in the history of the world is that the devil or Satan or whatever you want to call him can tell you is that he's not real.
That's right.
And if he gets you to believe that, then he's won. And that is the biggest lie. And there's a lot of people out there that don't believe in the devil. They don't believe in Satan or his minions or the evil forces or anything else. But I'm here to tell you that it is real. It is. God showed it to me. He showed me the difference between the good spirits and the bad spirits, or what we call bad spirits. And they will use your mind like a battlefield. That's the devil's way of messing with your head. And he gets in there and he'll say these things, and then you start believing. If it's a good spirit that's talking to you, you're going to feel joy. You're going to feel the light. It's going to feel light. It's going to feel airy. You're going to feel positive. They don't order you around. When an evil entity is around, you're going to feel darkness, depression, oppression. They order you to do things. They don't make suggestions. They will tell you, you do this or else. They do manipulate. They tell you lies. And they will enforce those lies until you believe them. They will get you to do drugs. They will get you to drink. They will get you to fly off the handle when you're not normally that kind of person. Oh, this won't hurt you. Go ahead. It won't. You won't get stuck. You won't get suckered in. You can stop anytime you want. Go ahead. Stick that needle in your arm. Go ahead. Do it. Here's the Ouija board. Go ahead. Talk to whoever you want to. It's not going to hurt anything. It's just a board. It's a game. It's not real. Go ahead. Do it. Do it. That kind of stuff. They can even quote the Bible, but what they do is they put a little spin on it that's like, that doesn't sound quite right. There's something wrong with that, you know? And what they do is they get you when you're most vulnerable, when you're sleepy, hungry, tired, sad, lonely. They wreak havoc with people.
Why do they do it?
Because they can. Because people are more vulnerable at that time, and they look for people's weaknesses. And the worst thing you can do is show fear, because they will grow prolifically with fear. They love it. If you're scared of them, oh my goodness, they get bigger and badder. And people who say that it's not real, that it's all make-believe, it is not make-believe. And God actually showed me how to discern spirits by showing me, because when I came back from my near-death experience, I'm able to see people. And we call them spirits, but I call them, they are just people without bodies. They are still who they were before. So I see these people and they look solid to me. They look just like I'm looking at you. When it very first started happening, I didn't know what in the world was going on. I had to teach myself. It took me many years to learn what was really going on. And I had to lay down ground rules, flat out. You don't wake me up. I don't want to see any scary crap. I don't want to see, you are not going to haunt me. We're not doing that. I'm not playing any head games here. You have something you want to say to me. You need any help? I'm here to help, and I will listen. I can see you. You know I can, but I can also shut my eyes too. I've had some that have woke me up, and I finally had to say, wait a second. I need my sleep. Do not wake me up. Do not pull the sheets off the bed. Don't slam the doors around. I don't need to be scared. I've been in don't show me how you die. Don't show me body parts falling off. What you see in horror movies, that kind of thing. I don't want to see that stuff. I recognize when they're around. I recognize it because I start feeling depressed. I start feeling scared. I start feeling all of these emotions. They're not from God. Those kinds of emotions do not come from God. So as soon as I start feeling that way, it's like, okay, I have three things that I do. the first thing I do is I say, in the name of Jesus, go to God and be dealt with according to his will. I don't give them a name. I don't tell them. I don't say, well, you go to hell. I don't say that because, well, I'm going to go there and get bigger and stronger, and I'm going to come back and get you even harder. So I let God deal with it. God knows the best way to deal with these things, So that's the first thing I do. The second thing I do is when there is a presence here and that presence is gone, there is a void that's left, an empty hole that's left. You want to fill that hole up, because if you don't, bigger and badder ones are going to come, even more. So what I do is I pray and I ask the Holy Spirit to come and fill the void that was left. The third thing I do is I ask God to send his holy angels to put a hedge of protection around me, my family, my home, the land the home sits on, my car, my work, the road, anything and everything that I can think of, to just surround with his protection so that they can't get through. They can't bother me. And they leave. I mean, you say in the name of Jesus, go to God. They can't be around, and they will go like that. And I've seen some of them, and the gray, blobby looking, hideous looking thing, that I saw come out of someone once when this thing was inside this person, and I was just like, no, you're not, no. And I just flat out called it out, and I said, you are a created being just like we are created beings. You only think you have the power. You don't. There is a power stronger than you will ever be. And that's when I said, in the name of Jesus, go to God and be dealt with. And it was gone instantly. I mean, just faster than I could get the words out. There is a warfare going on, and I have seen the dark mist. If you desire God in your life, if you desire to have a relationship with God, and you live your life going in that direction, they're going to come after you. What are you going to do with your life? Our being here is intricately important to all of creation. Really, you don't need devices. You don't need things like that. If you really have a true gift to be able to read the Akashic Records or read the Book of Life, for someone, it's a gift. Just like being able to translate what someone has said when they spoke in tongues. He flat out told me, I love you, and there isn't anything that you could say or do or even think that would ever change how I think of you or what I feel for you. I love you. I will always love you, no matter what. We are always hardest on ourselves. We judge ourselves harder than anybody ever could. And having said that, God does not judge. And Jesus is God in human form. And a lot of people don't believe that. They, get into the theological whatever. And I'm not going to get into all that because I don't really know it. But Jesus was God in human form. People wanted to know who God was, needed to know who God was, because they thought God was an angry, vengeful, hateful God. God is not that. God is nothing more than love, period. God is love. That's what God is. He is not someone that sits up there with a black book and check marks about every little thing you do right or wrong or whatever. He doesn't keep track. When we feel we've done something wrong and we say we're sorry, instantly, he forgets. He's got the brain that can forget. We're the ones whose brains are wired to remember. So the moment we say, I'm sorry, that we call it sin, but sin just means miss the mark. the action that might have hurt someone or hurt ourselves or whatever is as far as the east is to the west. And he doesn't remember those things. And so forgiveness is it's not required, but it's what sets us free from the chains of regret and sorrow and all of those things that we term as bad. Now, the one thing that I learned about the spirit world and the hereafter is that what we are experiencing and what we term as good or bad those are human terms. Good and bad is a human term. This is a bad experience, or this was a good experience, or whatever. That's our humanness, our human way of expressing what was good or what was bad. But in heaven or in the spirit world, experience is just experience. It isn't good, it isn't bad. There is no term for good or bad. It just is. It's an experience that taught you something to help you grow spiritually. And one of the reasons why we're here on this earth is to grow spiritually. It is within the human experience that the soul does the most growing.